guys, welcome back to Chapter and Ash. I am Ash, you are here, and I am pumped. Today, a nice light, positive video for you guys. I kid. These are 10 books that will leave you questioning life. Now, I consider myself a pretty positive, happy-go-lucky dude, but I'm not gonna lie, I also struggle with, I'm a seeker, I'm a searcher, and I struggle with nihilism and existential dread personally. And for whatever reason, I actually find it somewhat cathartic to seek out books like these, the ones I'm about to recommend to you guys, dealing with trauma, dealing with meaninglessness, nihilism, obsession, psychosis, and everything surrounding it. So these are 10 of my top recommendations for books that will leave you in a state of existential dread. So,
what is my purpose?
You pass butter.
Oh my god.
Welcome to the video. You must be messed up like I am. Let's go ahead and jump into the list. Coming in at number 10 is A Painted Bird by Jerry Kaczynski. This was written in 1965. So they thought this was going to be an autobiographical novel, or they thought it was for a long time. He subsequently came out and said it wasn't. Either way, this is a strong one that will leave you feeling a certain kind of way for a long time, right? It's chilling, really. It's about a 6-year-old in World War II in Eastern Europe who basically his parents, he's a Jewish child, right? So he's trying to avoid genocide. His parents send him off with a guy to try to protect him and keep him hidden, right? And he ends up quickly kind of on his own through other circumstances. And he's just kind of wandering almost indifferently from village to village and just witnessing all these atrocities, right? So it has graphic violence, sexual assault, animal cruelty. Obviously, it's dealing with genocide on kind of the macro sense here. For me, this book really does do a great job of, through the eyes of a 6-year-old, right, kind of witness with this naivete and almost also indifference, a boy who's trying to figure out life, right, from a 6-year-old's point of view, but witnessing some of the worst deplorable acts of humanity possible, right? It's this weird kind of unique take on something that was so bad through the eyes of somebody who is so innocent. And that's my first recommendation. That's A Painted Bird. Coming in at number 9 is The Collector by John Fowles. This was written in 1963. This is about a guy named Frederick, right? He is a lonely kind of recluse butterfly collector, okay? But then this dude wins the lottery, okay? He wins the lottery, he gets a lot of money, and suddenly he starts to, go through some episodes of psychosis stemming from kind of the lonely and isolated life that he was living as a butterfly collector. And he decides that with all this lottery winnings, he's going to build basically a prison, right? He's going to kidnap somebody that he becomes obsessed with, kind of a young girl named Miranda. So this book is very interesting, obviously very deep and dark subject matters, no doubt about that. But I didn't find it to be, super like gory or graphic, but very disturbing at the same time. The interesting thing about this one is you're kind of drawn to human monsters, right? There's a reason that we watch like true crime documentaries and stuff, right? Not because they're unrelatable necessarily, but because they're almost too recognizable, right? When you don't know anybody, when you leave your house, right? So this, for me, Frederick, the protagonist, he is kind of represents your everyday, who could be your everyday person. And it's eerie and weird. The cool thing about this book that I really did enjoy is the first half is told from Frederick's point of view. And the second half is told, you switch from the captor to the captive in Miranda's point of view. It's a really dark book, but a pretty interesting read at the same time. I enjoyed this one, if that's probably the wrong word, but that's number 9, The Collector. Coming in at number 8 is Requiem for a Dream by Hubert Selby Jr. This was written in 1978. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the movie from 1990. This one's messed up. I remember watching this movie. I can hear the theme song, that classical piece in the background, right, as I'm talking right now. This one does do a pretty good job at like mimicking the movie, the book. A lot of books I recommend are quite different from the movie. We talked about Jurassic Park and The Shining and a few others as well. This one I found to be pretty similar to the movie, but almost more disturbing if that's possible. Now, obviously, it's a book. It lacks the visual, that the movie does, but it will it tells the story in a more robust way, right? In a deeper way that makes you connect to the characters more than the movie, at least me, right? So it starts about 4 New Yorkers basically chasing different dreams turned into kind of illusions, turned into psychosis, right? From drug dealing and to make a lot of money, to get wealthy, to make a lives for themselves, and then getting hooked on their own product. Or, of course, the woman who becomes obsessed with a TV show and wants to be on the TV show. You can connect through these stories because it strips humanity down to just want and desire. But this book does a great job of flipping that narrative around and showing the dark side of desire, especially desire without love and relationships and all the other things that are meaningful in life. That's The Requiem for a Dream, coming in at number 8. Coming in at number 7 is The Cement Garden by Ian McEwan, written in 1978. This one is very interesting. It's got kind of maybe a Lord of the Flies kind of vibe to it, but much darker. It's about 4 children whose parents die, and they hide the bodies, and then they're just left to their own devices. Now, as with all my videos, I want them to be totally spoiler-free, so I'm not going to share too much about this one. But this one has just an overarching, absolute, non-judgmental indifference over the entire situation. At first, it's kind of like, okay, our parents are dead, they're sad, but they have such freedom as 4 adolescents. And then it all breaks down. This book is about how love really, curdles, disintegrates without guidance, right? And it's weird. It starts about survival, but then it just gets so warped. And if you're fascinated by decay, right, and what can happen from obviously an awful situation with the parents dying, but there is this high moment in the beginning of like, we can figure this out, we can do it, from the children, and then everything absolutely just it falls apart, right? It falls apart. So I won't say any more, but that's The Cement Garden at number 7. It's messed up, but if you're, not a big fan of Lord of the Flies, maybe you are a big fan of Lord of the Flies, but you want something a little bit deeper and darker in that kind of that kind of realm, check out The Cement Garden. Coming in at number 6 is my most recent read, not just on this list, but in aggregate, and that is No Longer Human by Osamu Dazai, written in 1948. Sorry if I butcher any of these pronunciations. This one is very interesting. It's told through kind of notebooks following this adolescent, maybe a little bit older than that, maybe like late teens, early 20s. I'm not sure if they actually give his age, but basically this is a dude, Oba, and in Japan, and he really just does not feel like a human, right? He does not feel like he belongs. He feels like he's incapable of being authentic, right? Now, I have actually struggled with feelings that are kind of adjacent to this, right? Like, I haven't gone through it like he has, but what he does is he ends up like drowning himself in prostitution and alcohol and any women he can find just to feel something. This is loneliness, but just jacked up. It's not really melodramatic. It's told very, very matter-of-factly, right? Which gives it some sort of like maybe a The Stranger type vibe. The Stranger, which we'll talk about later in this list. So I think that this one is so sincerely written, so authentic. It's so honest, right? Really, but it's also deeply disturbing. And I found myself relating in a lot of ways, unfortunately, to what the protagonist was experiencing through this book. That's No Longer Human at number 6. Coming in at number 5 is The Trial by Franz Kafka, written in 1925. Did you guys know that Kafka died before finishing this book? And against his wishes, his friend Max published the book. There's almost a forbidden piece of literature here. And this one is also very disturbing. It's almost psychological manipulation in a way, what this story is all about. It's about the protagonist, Kay, who basically wakes up one morning and he's arrested for a crime that he has no idea about, right?
You're under arrest.
Who accuses me? What's the charge?
The more he protests his innocence, the more things become estranged from reality, I guess, right? And it just basically it goes into this really mental kind of spiral, and you don't know as the reader what is real anymore. Bizarre things happen. He like randomly sleeps with one of the other like characters, and it feels like paranoia. The whole book feels like paranoia mixed with despair, mixed with confusion, as you're going through, in relating to the protagonist who's on trial for something that he doesn't even know about. So I'm putting this book so high on the list because this is about power in society, and when you don't have power against those who do, and how hopeless and how unbelievably just disarming it can be in every sense of the word, mentally, physically, and, when things are totally out of your control, and how you can absolutely just, feel futile to the world around you. That is The Trial, coming in at number 5. Coming in at number 4 is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. Now, this is I think this is going to be the most polarizing book on the entire list. This one is absolutely not for everybody. This one is, remember when the intro, when I was talking about emotional terrorism, they're just going to make you feel incredibly sad time and time and time and time again? This is the book that I was thinking about here, right? It follows 4 friends from New York, but it really starts to focus gradually on this one guy, Jude, the main protagonist, right? And basically, he's gone through like immense both physical and mental, emotional trauma in his life. And you're always finding yourself as the reader just rooting for him and rooting for things to get better and almost waiting for things to get better. And, well, kind of spoiler, it doesn't really. Whenever you have some hope, it doesn't come to fruition. And really, it's a tearjerker. It's a very difficult read. And I can understand why some people don't like it, because it does seem like sorrow and pain just for sorrow and pain's sake, right? It portrays suffering not as some spectacle with meaning, but just as some basic truth in the world. And sometimes I feel that way when bad things are happening all around me and I can't have any control to change anything. I feel hopeless. I feel nihilistic. I feel like, good doesn't exist, or everything is just, some apathy, right? Anyway, A Little Life kind of brings out those feelings in me about the world around me. And it's a difficult one. You have to be in the right mindset for this one. And again, it's not for everybody, but it did have a real lasting impact for me. And that is A Little Life at number 4. Coming in at number 3 is Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. This was written in 1866, guys. This is a really, really good read, honestly. It was written, obviously, a long, long time ago, but it still holds up. It's still a page turner in my book. I read it fairly recently. I reread it fairly recently. And man, it's really solid. It's about a desolate student, kind of an intellectual. He's not a dummy, but he almost talks himself into, or has this fleeting feeling that morality does not apply to him, right? So he decides to make this or commit this heinous crime where he basically murders, in a crime gone awry, commits this extreme act of murder on this elderly woman who's a pawnbroker, right? This is the beginning of the novel, so no spoilers here, right? But then again, you've had 150 years to read it. So basically, his intellect turns into this psychosis, right? He is absolutely just griped with delirium and paranoia and guilt, self-justification, and much, much more. So the crime happens early on to this kind of, a little bit of a hubris around the protagonist. And then things just fall apart from there. We fall apart as the main character does in this novel. If you're drawn to like brilliance undone by pride, or minds that overthink a lot, which I certainly am, this is going to be a great novel for you to check out. Even though it's a classic and it's old, Crime and Punishment makes it in at number 3 on the list. Coming in at number 2 is The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka, written in 1915. Gregor Samsa, he wakes up as this giant insect, right? Kafka actually told the publisher he never wants illustrations of this book because he did not want to show the insect, right? He wanted the horror to be meant to live in the reader's imagination on this book, which I find very interesting because I was initially turned off a little bit. I think I read the blurb about this. This is an easy read, by the way. I read the blurb, I'm like, dude, a guy who turns into an insect, probably not for me. But But it's really meant to be an allegory about dehumanization, about neglect, self-loathing. There's so many ways you can interpret this book, honestly. It's really about the nightmare of invisibility, right? How quickly affection for somebody can die off when they it stops being convenient for the others who are loving them, right? So when his family finds out, basically they grow disgust for Gregor, right? And then Gregor kind of starts to deteriorate, right? And he starts to adapt, not with positive vibes, but with really negative vibes. He starts to be relieved as he turns himself inward and starts to self-isolate himself, right? You can connect with this book on so many levels. There's really this quiet horror and this element of being afraid of your own life, of why others around you love you and appreciate you. Do they really love and appreciate you, or do they just love and appreciate what you do for them? You know, there's a lot deeper meaning in this book than just that, but it's really haunting what happens to Gregor, and not in a silly sci-fi kind of way that he turns into a bug, but in a deep way that I think we all can connect with on so many levels. That's The Metamorphosis at number 2. Coming in at number 1 on our list is going to be, if you know me so far, you might not be surprised by this one. It's The Stranger by Albert Camus, written in 1942. Man, it is such a shame that Camus died in a car accident at such a young age, because he's really one of my favorite authors, especially of the classics. It's about, basically, this book is about the protagonist who lives in French Algeria, and he kills a man for no reason, right? This happens at the very beginning of the book, and you see the main character's indifference from the very, very beginning. He's like, mother died today, or was it yesterday, right? That's the famous first line of the entire novel, right? This is a simple book. I feel like some people, I remember when I read this in high school, I was like, yeah, it's all right. You know, it left no lasting impact on me. When I read it later at university, I actually really developed a love for this book, and I've reread it multiple times since. Camus himself claimed that the novel was a story of the man condemned for telling the truth. That's what he said the book was about, right? If you appreciate people who stare into the void of nothingness, meaninglessness, nihilism, who keep walking and not flinching, even though there's no reason left, this is the book for you, right? This is what the book essentially is about. It's about existential dread, despair, what this whole list is about, right? He gets, the main character gets chastised by society more, not for the murder, but for his indifference. Not caring about his mom dying, not crying at the funeral, stuff like that, right? So it really transforms apathy into philosophy, this book, in a way that's not shoving anything down your throat. It's almost written in a different way, but it will leave you with such a lasting impact. That's why The Stranger comes in at number 1. Guys, that is my list. Enjoy. Let me know, by the way, in the comments below of these lists, of these book recommendations, which, if any, you intend to read, right? Based off my recommendation. This is a tough one, but hopefully these books do leave you questioning life in all the right ways, right? Sometimes when you read a book that's meant to, in some ways, bring you down, sometimes that can actually act as some sort of a catalyst to bring you back up as well, at least for me. Anyway, thanks for watching till the end of the video. Much love, and as always, take care, guys.